everyone. This is Sara Carranza with the Chicago Latino Theater Alliance. And today we're having a wonderful charlando with, well, charla, the show is called Charlando, with two of my favorite Jorges in the Chicago Latino theater world, Jorge Valdivia from the National Museum of Mexican Art and Jorge Silva from the Neo-Futurists. They can introduce themselves and tell you guys a little bit more about who they are. And we'll start right now. Which Jorge wants to go first?
I'll go, I guess. I'm not sure what the tenets are, like what the points of introduction here are, but I'm Jorge Silva, as you said, he, him, his. I'm the managing director for the Neo-Futurists. I was previously working with the Goodman. I'm originally from Chicago. I'm from Bridgeport originally, but I've also lived in DC and New York. So I have a little bit of, I've been running around for the last few years, but I'm probably comparatively to y'all a little more newer to the scene.
And I'm Jorge Valdivia. I curate the Performing Arts series for the National Museum of Mexican Art. I also manage their literary arts and some film. And so, yeah, thanks for having us.
No, thank you for joining us. So the conversation for today's charla is going digital in the time of COVID. So these are two individuals that I've seen on the scene that have been doing really stellar work. There is no map for what's going on right now. And I just wanted to pick their brains and for them to tell us a little bit more about their processes in moving to digital. Let's start off with the Neo-Futurists, right? So I've been seeing like them on the news all over the place because of your efforts going for the Infinite Wretch going digital.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know what the Infinite Wrench is, the Infinite Wrench is our flagship show. It's a show we do 50 weeks out of the year, 3 nights out of the week. That's an ongoing, ever-changing attempt to do 30 plays in 60 minutes. And we've been doing it for 31 plus years. It's Chicago born. This like style, this aesthetic as well, because we do non-illusory experimental theater, meaning that we always play ourselves. We never play characters. We're never like a rapping founding father. We're always ourselves on stage, right? So like, I'll always be Jorge on stage, and all the stories you see on stage are from the people who wrote it, and they perform it and they direct it as well. So
you're not going to be Jorge Washington. You're just
I'm not going to be Jorge Washington. No, I was not in the room. So, but it's a really unique aesthetic. So, and that's kind of the fun part about it, is that it's not precious and they have to make new plays. And I say they are because we're an ensemble-led company. And so the ensemble who are performing in the show every week have to write new sets of plays for every weekend, meaning that we're always topical and we're always experimental, because again, like the constraint of being non-illusionary makes it so that they have to get really, really creative with what it means to be abstract, or to create a movement piece or a monologue piece or a dialogue piece. And if there was ever a company that I would expect to be able to create a brand new version of their show in a week, it's the Neo-Futurists. So when we...
Oh, wait, can you track? Wait, you said a week?
A week. So like we closed on March 13th, like we closed our physical space, right? And it was eerily enough that it was Friday the 13th. And we got together that weekend as a company, pitched a new idea about how we could take the show digital and adapt, because we didn't want to stop. Like there's a huge tradition of like, where you can't stop, we won't stop, we'll always do the show no matter what. And so in a matter of a week, they made the new process and digital adaptation. So we closed down the 13th, put together a new show, and the following week we had a brand new version called The Infinite Wrench Goes Viral.
That's super sick. Did you have like super technology gurus that knew?
You know, the thing is like, not really. Like we have like major startup energy at the middle of March, where we're suddenly engaging with terms and ideas that we've never had to before. Like we're all theater artists. And you know, at that, everybody has like a varied set of skills that they bring to the table. And like some folks are filmmakers by training, and some aren't. Some people are dancers by training and some aren't, right? And puppeteers, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, there was only a few of us that really had a you know, peripheral grasp of what it means to create content and to supply it for digital consumption. but for the most part, no, we all ended up having to learn on the go. So, and also like trying to create content remotely was also its own process of like, how do we create work together while apart? And again, we had to kind of make that on the fly. So nobody's really a real expert on digitization, but we had to learn. We just had to.
Jorge Valdivia, going over to the National Museum of Mexican Art. Y'all had the Sor Juana Festival completely planned.
Yeah.
It was going to be completely in person. And then we were told
COVID
to stay at
happened.
home.
Yeah. It's interesting because, we had just made the big announcement and we were promoting heavily. And not only that, but we had already booked about, I want to say 70% of, maybe 80% of the flights and hotels. And so I remember, it's funny because, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to Jorge's story, my tocayo here. And I think Friday the 13th is a day that a lot of us in the arts will remember because what I can say is this much. As far as museums are concerned, that is a definitive date when museums decided to close. Announcements were made that same day. Behind the scenes, what a lot of people don't know is that for us, we had artists that had already flown in to Chicago from Los Angeles. So we had an event called Vintage Vibes with Giselle, Monica Rocha, and Cota. And so this was going to be a live concert. The event, we had over 200 ticket sales. It was going to be a well-attended event. And so, but I think that we were all paying a very close eye to what was happening. And I think a lot of us in the arts, I'd like to believe, we sort of look at one another, at each other, and try to see, it's sort of I think this was unexpected. Nobody foresaw this pandemic happening. And I think we were just waiting to see what our colleagues were going to do, right? And so it just so happened that, that was the day that we decided that we were going to close. And so what we did is that same day, we decided to go ahead and live stream the concert from the museum. And we did that. Let's see. It was the same schedule for the most part that we were going to follow as if it were a live performance. And coincidentally enough, we were planning on streaming the event live anyway. That was going to be one of our first live streamed events. We had not streamed an event up until that point. And so we had already contacted someone internally who is very tech savvy and who had been doing a lot of research on what software to use, what platform. And he set up, he was able to do a multi-camera setup. So people were able to view the concert from different angles. And that was also a learning curve for us because it was the first time we did it. And so I think you're always trying to perfect the art of streaming. And so I think that the second event that we streamed was a lot better. The quality was amazing for the actual live event. And that was the first round that we did. But we've been, I think that, when that happened, I sort of, I just took a moment to think about what I could do programming wise. That was the immediate thing, the concert, we had the band. But then what was going to happen after that,
Right.
Those artists that we had in Chicago were going to fly back home. And so I realized, we booked these artists are not going to be doing anything in Mexico or in Chicago or in LA. So why not do interviews with them? And so that's what I did. I took a moment before we actually launched the interviews, just because COVID affected my family personally. And so it took a few weeks, but I, started doing the interviews. Those have gone well. I'm really looking forward to doing more events though, because I think they bring a certain energy and a different level of engagement
Mm-hmm.
with our audience.
Yeah, totally. I feel like, okay, so here's a really deep dive question, I guess you can say. One of the things that really fascinates me, right? How much were you guys aware of thinking of digital even before the pandemic? So like before you had to go digital, how important was it in your worlds of performing arts?
Well, I'll go ahead and take that one because I think that that's something that I have always been very intentional about from my department with the museum, performing arts. Even our online campaign, I think has always been very interesting. It's been aesthetically just really nice to look at, but it's not static. It never is. And so, and that's just one piece to it. But I think that conversations were already happening about how we can begin to not just, and there were a lot of different things that we were already doing. They were tiny, but I think that we were already moving in that direction. Everything from polls in our events to streaming, and which is why we were prepared to stream that day. So we were already moving in that direction. It's just that I think we were forced to do it a lot quicker and learn a lot more quickly than we would have liked to. But that's fine, because I think that that's why we are where we are now.
A juggernaut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jorge, y'all probably were like, there's this like the programming was probably kind of flexible in that regard, because as opposed to theater arts where there's like that's such a straightforward idea in so many ways, whereas y'all do so many different kinds of programs, from music to theatrical performances to exhibits. Like I feel like that has its own challenges.
Yeah. And I think the hard. I think one thing that people don't realize, to your point, Jorge, is with visual art, there are things that we just can't do because we don't own the rights to the artwork. But we could have conversations. There are things that are happening with our visual arts department that I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Do you get to give us any sneak peek?
I not really because I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but I'm really excited about some of the things that my colleagues in the visual arts department are working on. There are a lot of ideas that are brewing, and I think there are a lot of big questions that a lot of us in the arts are asking ourselves. Like, I'm really excited to see, I'm excited to just seeing what Jorge has done with Neo-Futurists. But how do you reimagine Dia de los Muertos? In a time of COVID. So those are very interesting conversations that are happening right now. But I don't want to speak for his department, my college department. So that's all I can say. It's exciting to be having.
Well, those are questions we have to have, right? For CLATA, it's the Stinos Festival, which usually goes from September to October. What does that look like in the time of COVID when people don't want to be in a small theater with X amount of people for X amount of hours?
Yeah. And I think, like, and I don't know, like, if Jorge, if you guys are having this conversation too, because it's summer now, right? So what does that mean in terms of online audience engagement when people really want to be outside? You know what I mean? Because I think that there's that question too, where that you're doing the responsible thing by not doing. First of all, you can't do any live events, but secondly, how the fact that we're in summer now and people are really being out there, how that is, if that is going to affect our online audience,
Yeah, the question has definitely come up, especially as businesses started to reopen, because
Yeah.
the initial fear was like people are no longer going to be looking for engagement or any kind of entertainment in their own homes. They're going to start going to businesses and doing the things that they've been missing out on for so long. And you're right, like we're not going to be able to do anything for a little while. It's a responsible thing to do. And for us specifically, like it's a particularly difficult challenge because we have a very small 147-seat theater. And the nature of our show, even if we could social distance, the nature of our show doesn't really allow it. And if we did a socially distanced version of The Infinite Wrench, it wouldn't look like The Infinite Wrench at all. And so we're getting closer to the aesthetic value by continuing to do the digital version, first of all, than we are trying to follow some set of guidelines that may or may not be able to actually protect us long term, right? So we're like, at this point, our mentality is like to double down and stick with what we're doing right now, and just and hope that the people that are engaging with us, that are looking at it from an accessibility point of view, for like folks who can't do an 11:30 show, which is when our show usually is performing, right? So like parents, for example, are not going to come see an 11:30 night show. Or like folks who moved away from Chicago, for example, right? Like we have a lot of fans from St. Louis and a lot of fans from like other countries, like in the UK and Italy and Spain, which is great. There's an accessibility thing that has also kicked up for us. And this is where a lot of the conversation for us began about trying to do digital work before the shutdown happened, right? We did the Mueller report reading in August. It was a 24-hour reading.
Looked awesome.
It was crazy. It was really, really great. It got really, really weird, especially in the wee hours of the night. We had Mock Rep, which is the experimental music group, come in and read the like blacked out pieces of the report, which was kind of insane because what they did was like they attached musical notes to every block of blacked out line.
Oh, so it was like a beat, but it was music?
Yeah. So like, and they had 4 performers, and you could see the screen that they were working off of, and it was wild. It was just wild. And then everybody else, all the ensemble members joined in with their own version of how to do the reading itself. So it was great. And like people tuned in through Twitch to check it out. And that was a real awakening for us to know that, oh, there's a lot of people that would love to engage with this, but just can't from where we are, especially with our physical space, where we are in the city, where like the fact that we're in Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. So, so that's where like the conversation began. So that was like, but that was the most of like how we were going to do digital. But it's also highlighted for us the fact that, you know, the nonprofit theater model we've known for a long time is not sustainable. And like trying to look into new forms and diversifying our mediums was already a part of a bigger conversation about, well, how do we make the model sustainable?
I'm just sorry, I'm just so in love with that conversation because amen. So I've been to like so many different conferences. I've been like at all of these different marketing everything, right? And the performing arts viewpoint pre-COVID was, it has to be the way it was. Nothing can change. Theater is theater, and people need to be in the space. If it's not in a theater with the lights and a stage, it's not theater. And I feel like this moment is actually transforming minds into like expanding that vocabulary. However, everyone's still having the conversation about when things go back to normal. I see you rolling your eyes, Jorge Valdivia. What's going on in your mind when I said that?
I just, I think that, first of all, there's a lot happening right now that I think, first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that some people don't want things to go back to normal. With the Black Lives Matter movement, especially, I think that what we're going to see is a new normal. And what that's going to look like, I have no idea, but I'm excited about it. And I think that a lot of us that work in the arts have been, particularly those of us that are working in the arts that are smaller theater companies, or that work with underrepresented populations, communities. I think that it's important for us to acknowledge and just admit that we have been fighting for a very small piece of the pie for a very long time. And I think that we have to have the conversations that are happening out there right now on the streets are conversations that we need to be having in the arts right now, as far, because when we look at the arts, the way the arts are funded, arts organizations that serve communities of color are disproportionately underfunded. And so they know they cannot go back to normal. They shouldn't go back to normal. And so for anyone who's saying that at conferences and in any Zoom, in any Zoom meeting that any of us are part of, this is a call to action to call them out and to say, no, absolutely not. Let's have these conversations and let's make people feel a little bit uncomfortable because it's the truth. So
I have to say yes to everything you just said, for sure. I mean, in terms of normalcy when it comes to like systemic structure,
yeah,
totally. I feel like a lot of people who never wanted to go into the digital world mean more so, let's go back to in-person and let's remove the digital once again. And I'm wondering if that's possible anymore. I don't know that after this, completely erasing a digital sphere is going to be possible.
I think we can have both, though. I think that, the three of us here, some of us might like, I don't know, vanilla ice cream. Others might like chocolate. And the thing is that, there are those of us that will seek out that in-person experience, right? That will pay a ticket to go see theater, live theater. I am absolutely one of those. I love theater. And I wish more of my friends love theater as much as I do, because, but the thing is that there are also people who might not feel comfortable going to see a live performance. And that's okay. For them, I think we will be able to provide something digital.
Yeah, I don't know when somebody's going to be able to make that call. When an organization or community is going to be able to make a call like that to say that we're going to let go of digital programming to go back to live programming and dust off hands. Because I feel like at any point when that decision is made, there's just going to have to be another reckoning, right? Like if I know there's like theaters that are really planning on trying to reopen and have performances between the months of November and December, and I'm so nervous about that. I'm so nervous about what that means for the safety of their artists, their staffs, their audiences, which is why I at this point, the Neo-Futurists at the very least were saying that we should double down and at least commit to doing digital programming for the foreseeable future. Even if there's an opportunity to go back to live programming, it doesn't mean that we should drop that, especially because so many people supported the digital efforts as a manner of trying to maintain engagement and maintain income, for example, right? To financially support these organizations. It feels, I don't know, it doesn't feel right to let go of that digital programming, especially for so many who are now looking at that as their accessible way to actually engage with the arts at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, Jorge, like there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to be wanting to engage in a live event all that soon. So, and there's a lot of people who really shouldn't at the end of the day. So yeah, like I think it would be great if and I can't really say that we're going to do digital programming because at this point, that's a decision that has to be made by our ensemble. And I think we're still in the throes of making that decision. But as a managing director, I would say, I hope we do. I really hope we do, because I think being able to bring programming, like just catharsis, being able to respond right now is really, really important. And that's one of the few things that I think we're doing right, is that we're accessible, we're responding to the events that are happening right now, and we're affordable, and like in the ways that we want to be if we were doing a live show. So this is the show.
Yeah. And I think it's really important also for us to acknowledge that it really isn't our call to make, because, we're abiding by state guidelines, right? And so city and state guidelines. And so it's, I know that those conversations are happening but there's also there are also conversations happening around the second wave, right? So a lot of this is, we're living in unprecedented times. We don't know what's going to happen, and I'm also I'm very concerned about the artists. I'm also very concerned about theaters reopening too soon, and what the repercussions would be for the audience that each of these theaters serves if they open too soon. Yeah, I think we're getting information, and some of it is changing. I know I still remember when a lot of us thought we weren't going to reopen until next year, and I mean as a city. And look at us now; we're beginning to reopen, right?
I'm kind of maybe I shouldn't be surprised because we had pretty strict rules right off the bat.
Yeah.
Well, rules, more like guidelines, but our numbers in Illinois seem to be the best in the nation. That's what they've been recording. However, even though our numbers are huge or like good and in comparison, we still lost so many individuals in Illinois. And so it's just a huge question mark. And for coming from the Chicago Latino Theater Alliance, the impact of the Latino community of COVID has been astronomical and devastating. So how are we as organizations of color providing a safer space for Latinos or Latinx individuals to consume their art? It's fascinating, and it kind of makes me wonder, because we also have a lot of different types of meetings. Do folks have the access as well? So were they equipped with high-speed internet at home to be able to consume and get the information that they're supposed to need? Also with the art, because everyone needs to have something to watch when they're home. But one of the things that I want viewers to know, I'm gonna out all of us a little bit here. When we first joined in on the Zoom, before I hit record, I asked people how they were doing, and the overall response was, are you burning out? And what are you doing if you aren't to not burn out from all the work that happens in the digital sphere?
I feel like I'm always at work now, but that's not a novel idea at this point, just because of my computer's always here. The work is always there. So it feels like every day I'm at work. I think it's, I don't know if I figured out how not to burn out. I'm not burning out just yet. With the end of the semester, right, I got a little bit, the beginning was tough just because I was still trying to teach my high schoolers and my undergraduates. And with the semester ending, I got a little bit of relief, but now we're looking to expand the digital programming. And so that's a lot of other questions, but I think it's a matter of trying to maintain some set of boundaries. I feel like that's all I can do at the moment. I don't know, what are you doing, Jorge?
Wow, boundaries. That's a very, I love, what are boundaries in time of COVID? Because that's, I don't know, so I've realized that I need to stop checking my email after a certain hour. But I think that I wasn't as busy when I first started quarantining, right? And then I started working on, I needed like a few weeks just to sort of to myself, and then when I started working, I started getting really busy, and I realized, so I work with a lot of artists from Mexico, right? Mexico City, to be specific. And so the preferable means of communication is via WhatsApp. And I need to stop giving my WhatsApp number because I've found myself answering messages at like 11:30 at night. And, you know, and then, you know, sometimes I'm in the middle of a social Zoom with my friends where I'm trying to decompress and my phone is, you know, being bombarded with all these questions. And so, yeah, you know, that's been a little bit difficult, and it's happened quite a few times, but I've, I've, um, I've learned to say, please do not message me after this hour.
Mm.
You know, because you know, I shouldn't be getting messages on my phone at 11:30 at night, midnight. You know, and that's just me learning to set boundaries. Just because we're quarantining and we're working from home, doesn't mean we're working from home at midnight.
Right.
Yeah, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. I'm gonna try to keep my hours as close to what they were before. And
Jorge, just for reference, what is your WhatsApp number, please?
yeah, sure. Right now.
Oh wait, you can't give it to him until he has his team make music for the bleep out.
That's right.
Yeah. No. I think, and it's very easy for us to sort of get used to working a little bit here late at night and working here and there, and before you know it, you've really, you know, spent 14 hours working from home on something that you should have just spent maybe 5-6 hours doing. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
just me. That's just me.
There's also the learning curves. I feel like I'm learning a whole lot of skill sets and programs and platforms that I never had to engage with before. That's the other thing.
I agree. Yeah, because we're doing so much research on you know, what's the right platform to use. I agree with you. Yeah.
Here's another deep dive question for you both. Have you gone into the rabbit hole of TikTok?
So somebody in our company really wanted to, because I thought this is the new social media platform we ought to be on. Like, and if anybody can do TikTok, like short form pieces, it should be the Neo-Futurists. But there's there's just too much socio-political baggage with TikTok, right? As a program that was like, we're gonna keep our hands clean for now. That may change. Well, because it's a you know, because of where the program originates. And like the kind of like security accesses and privacy settings that are available, right? And like the potential hazards of being on that particular platform. There's a lot of just too many question marks that we've kind of backed off of it. So we're just going to try to make Twitter work for now.
And you know, I think that I've tried, honestly, but I don't really. I think that I've used TikTok to promote. I used it to promote Queer Prom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's it. But I think I'm busy enough managing what I do now that I really don't need to go down a rabbit hole.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think the other concern we had was like, if we get on TikTok now, as opposed to like if we got on it like a year ago or something, it would have that vibe of like, we're trying too hard to be cool. Like, hello, fellow teenagers.
Well, you know, to your point, there was a wonderful TikTok that I saw. It was a 40-something, 53-year-old guy who was basically, you know how they do the split screen where, okay, so on one half of the screen, it was this teenager like, oh God, have you noticed all these adults that are joining TikTok? They're like in their 40s, and the guy's like, I'm 53. And so he's trying to be cool, and he's like dancing, and they're just like killing his buzz. He's like, well, so much for that. Yeah,
so
yeah.
What's your guys' platform of choice then?
What's that?
What's your platform of choice then?
Right now, for me, it's Instagram, but I realize that a lot of our audience prefers Facebook. That's a reality, and so for instance, today, mostly all the interviews that I've done have been on Instagram, but we tried doing one last week on Facebook Live, because you know how Facebook just introduced the dual screens for lives. You can't do it. Yeah, but you can't do it. So the only issue with that is, the caveat is, you can't do it if you have a nonprofit account or a business account.
Ooh.
Yeah, you could do it if you have from your personal account. Let's say you and I, Sara, I do a live. I can invite you to do a live with me, and you have the option of doing it horizontal view or vertical.
So then what would the museum do? You would share it from the individual?
So with the museum,
a watch party?
if it was enabled, we would have done, like, the museum would have started a live. I would have invited the artist, but we're doing it through Zoom today, and it's going to be linked to Facebook Live.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah. So my preferred platform is Instagram. It's just easy. It's short, to the point. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Jorge Silva?
Oh, I feel like a grandfather when it comes to social media. I'm so bad at it.
Are you younger than me?
He's so bad. I don't know.
I love how he just says, I don't know. Yeah.
Good answer.
I'm just so bad at it either way. So like, and it was particularly bad when I became a part of the company, when I would get thrown an assignment, like a social media assignment, because we just like rotate some of the responsibilities on a regular. And I would be spending literal hours trying to do one single post. And I'm so glad that I don't have to do that anymore. I have more savvy people working with me to do that. But no, I'm terrible at it. Instagram is probably my favorite, only just because I feel kind of like it's secure in the fact that I could do an Instagram story and know that it'll disappear after a little while. Like the level of impermanence is reassuring.
You know, it's funny because that's what I like the most about Instagram stories and Snapchat. I don't really use Snapchat for the organization or anything, but the Instagram stories, because whenever you make a mistake on social media, someone will always find it and let you know about it.
Oh, yeah.
So like when you do a story, if you make a mistake or a typo, it's just there and then it'll go away and no one will know you did it.
See, that's exactly it. Like I feel like you're telling me the story of writing emails for a large nonprofit. You know, like you send out an email, somebody will remind you that English is your second language or something like that. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, that's probably another where my insecurities are linked.
Yeah, I just tell them it's a social experiment, and they fall for it.
You know, I used to do that with program books. If there were ever a typo in there, I'd be like, "Oh, you found it? Great! You get a surprise because you found our planned typo in the program book."
Oh my God! You know, I'll tell you one thing. I hate editing. You know, for me, putting together the brochure for the Sor Juana Festival is a nightmare. That's probably like my least favorite. Yes, I'm saying it publicly, just because of the editing process. Editing process is a nightmare. And when you realize that something, you know, it just missed the first, second, third, and final review, it sucks. Yeah. So I feel you, Sara. I feel you.
So it's actually about time, and I'm kind of surprised that I am sticking on time. Our first two charlas were supposed to be 30 minutes, and we went up to like a full-on hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, it's just, you know, chatting with folks is like fun, but also I kind of feel like when you've been doing digital for a while, you like to try to be like concise and to the point. I guess I would want to say, or I would want us to sign off with each of us. Well, I don't need to. Each of you saying where you see the arts industry going in the next year. How about this after COVID? Because we don't know.
I'm sorry, were you gonna say something already?
No, please. This is me trying to formulate a thought, and I just make an ugly face to do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you know, I can say this much. I think that we're gonna see a hybrid of what we knew before COVID and what we see now, I think that we're going to continue to see a lot of virtual events, and we're going to see newer models, and they will look better and better. But I think that in the end, you know, someone will do research, and you know, once we reopen, and we will realize that you know, and we said this earlier, but that some people will still prefer to attend live in-person events, and others will feel more comfortable doing, you know, attending them virtually, and that's okay. I think that this is an opportunity for us to really look at look at this as an opportunity to attract a new audience that we may not have engaged before. That's I think, a healthy way for us to approach this.
That I think what you said, Jorge, is dead on, especially when it comes to the formation of new hybridized models of arts organizations. And I'll speak to theater because, like Sara, we were just talking about how the nonprofit model was not sustainable previous to COVID, anyways. So I think a lot of those cracks are just going to be become wide open and seen and have to be addressed now, which is going to be good. And I think having the fact that we've been forced to shutter our doors and think about what we're actually doing and creating on top of a political uprising is also going to be forcing a lot of organizations to really examine the role of arts organizations in either supporting communities or sustaining archaic practices that are unhealthy and toxic and propagating oppression in
Yes.
all forms, right? So when we get back to a place, there's going to because I have a lot of hope and a lot of investment in the movement at the moment, which is that we're going to, as communities, invest in organizations that really speak to our values. And so I think that a lot of companies are going to have to make huge changes. And I think that what they put out is going to have to be also a combination where we're going to see more organizations shift to a service model where we're not just make a thing, you come, give us money. It is, you have to, you come, you give us money because we're doing something else that serves the community, that's supplemental. And I think that's going to be content, that's going to be community engagement as well.
Yeah.
I'm just going to lift up Jorge Valdivia's clap to actually have it in the space. That is, yes, a million times yes.
Yeah. I think, I also hope that, I'm going to say this because I know that you can't, Sara, but I'm going to say this because I think it's really important. This is a really good opportunity for foundations to look at who they're funding and to rethink those diversity funds that they give out to those large, predominantly white institutions, and to just give them to the institutions that are actually already have a diverse audience. You know
what? Yeah, you called me out there, Jorge Valdivia. You called me out there. But yeah, no, let's talk about that a little bit. And I'm sorry, I thought we were going to sign off, but this is why we end up going for an hour probably. One of the interesting things that have come up recently, especially due to the Black Lives Matter movement, is the We See You movement from a collective of individuals of color in the theater community. So it's Dear White Theater. Yeah. And it basically talks about that kind of thing as well, where like people of color have been asked to join the ranks of predominantly white institutions. Their bodies, their stories, their hard work have been there as a diversity hire to benefit these major archaic institutions. Mm-hmm. And yet those dollars aren't being given to the people who've been doing it in the community, who've been doing the work in the community, and have been telling their own stories. So right on.
Yeah, and I've heard so many stories of these big grant dollars going to a larger, predominantly white institutions who have, to put it bluntly, dying audiences, right? And who have been unsuccessful in really diversifying their audience. And so my question is, why do those dollars keep going to these institutions when they've failed time and time again? You know, it's a good question, because I think that, you know, there is a reason that we have the largest number of Latinx theaters in the country, right? Do we not?
Really?
Do we? It's, if not the second in Chicago. I thought we were something like that. I could be wrong, but I know we have a, well, there's, you know, if we're not, don't quote me on that. But I will say this, in the last, I can say this, in the last 10, 15 years, we've seen quite a number of theaters emerge, right? In the last 20 years, theaters have come and gone. But I think that these theaters have emerged because there's been very little representation by major mainstream institutions. And so they've obviously have not been heard. We've seen a few things happen here and there, but you know, it's been this, what we're seeing now I think is we're not only living in unprecedented times because of COVID, we're also living in these times because people are speaking out because we're simply tired, you know. And I'm not saying that in any way to sort of attach myself to the Black Lives Matter movement. No. But I think that it goes back to what you said earlier, the We See You movement that we're seeing right now happen. You know, this is an opportunity to really sort of have those conversations with foundations as well, because those are they're the ones that hold the money.
Yes, and I can definitely say that CLATA has been having those conversations with foundations that have given us support. But it kind of goes to say, if we know that we're getting support from certain foundations, the people that'll have the ear of the other ones that don't are the people from the foundations. So it's kind of, it's an interesting time to be alive. And I know that there have been other like moments of change throughout history. But I really have a cautious hope at this point in time, because you're right. And I think that's one of the things that, I guess, to tie it back into the conversation that we've had here, is that digital media, the digital realm, makes it even more apparent. We can see it more, we know it more, and there's no hiding from it because the internet's there.
Yeah.
And on that dramatic note, I am going to say thank you to my favorite Chicago Jorges, because they're both born and raised Chicago. Honestly, thank you. And I'm sure I'm going to be calling upon you guys again. Like I said, with the wonderful ladies from our Afro-Latino representation in theater, charla, I will call upon you again to assemble the Avengers for another charla of some sort. So thank you, my love to all of you. And I am going to say adios.